Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the gallery talk for Fresh Squeezed 10. Thank you so much for joining us. We're here tonight to talk with two of our Fresh Squeezed artists, Angelina Palmisano and Jamie Rodriguez. This is the fourth of four gallery talks that we're hosting during this show. So this is the last one. And if you missed the first three, you can go to the Morean Art Center's YouTube channel and see all of them. We record them, or we upload them there after they happen. My name is Amanda Cooper, and I am the Chief Curator for the Morean Art Center. If you've never visited the Morean, we are a 109-year-old community art center located in beautiful downtown St. Pete. Here's a photo of our facade, and a little bit about Fresh Squeeze. First of all, the exhibition will be on view through June 25th, which is just next Thursday. So if you haven't seen it in person yet, I would encourage you to come by if you're in the area. There are two artists in the exhibition, Jillian Probert and Gwen Mailer, who their work is on display at the Chihuly Collection, which is across the street from the Morean, and their work will be on view through July 19th. So you still have some time to see their work, but the other six artists are going to be, the exhibition will close next week. So come by and see us. Thank you so much to our amazing sponsors. We couldn't do what we do without them. The Gobioff Foundation is an amazing Bay Area arts resource. If you've never heard of them, I would encourage you to look them up. They're a great resource for arts organizations in this area. And they've been supporters and cheerleaders of Fresh Squeeze since the very beginning, and we appreciate them so much. And the other sponsors for this exhibition are Lisa and Perry Everett, who are wonderful friends of the Morean going back decades. So you might be wondering, maybe, what is Fresh Squeezed? I'm going to talk about the program a little bit as I scroll through some photos of the artists, the 8 artists in the exhibition. The idea for Fresh Squeezed came about in 2017. The Morean was turning 100 years old, so we were celebrating our centennial. And we have spent the last 109 years nurturing the careers of emerging artists, and we wanted to go into the next 100 years doing it in a way that is intentional. So the idea for Fresh Squeezed was born. So each year for Fresh Squeeze, we post a call for entry and it goes out to artists across the state of Florida. So this is open to emerging artists anywhere in the state. And we usually get about 100 to 200 entries for the exhibition, and we only pick 6 to 8 artists for the show. So it's very competitive. And in the 10 years of Fresh Squeezed, we've exhibited the work of 64 artists from 27 Florida cities. So it's definitely a statewide exhibition. It's not just our regional artist. And if you're interested in seeing the artwork and learning more about those 64 artists, if you go to our website, moreanartcenter.org, there is a page for Fresh Squeezed, and there's a button on there that I think it's called Fresh Squeezed Archive or something like that. And you can look and see that we have the artists divided up by year. So you can click on all of them and see their Instagram pages. And I always have to say, this is Gwen Mailer's slide, but that's actually her lovely sister. It's not the artist. So if you're an artist watching this, if you're an emerging artist in Florida and you're like, hey, I'd be interested in participating in this, well, you're going to have to wait another year, because next year we're putting a pause on Fresh Squeezed. And so you can look for the call for artists for Fresh Squeezed 11 sometime in the summer of 2027. Next year, we're putting a pause on Fresh Squeezed because we're going to do a retrospective of the first 10 years of the program. So we're inviting all 64 artists from the first 10 years to display their artwork in the gallery. It's going to be one big show, so we get to see all of the artists we've known and loved over the last decade and see what they're doing now. And now on to the two artists who will be speaking tonight. The first artist up is Angelina Palmisano, And she recently earned her MFA from the University of Central Florida, and she lives in Orlando. And I want to stress the fact that while she was getting ready for Fresh Squeezed, which is a big undertaking for artists in and of itself, she was also finishing up her MFA thesis project at school. So, I mean, literally within the same time frame. So I just think that's amazing.
Thank
And this
you.
is a picture of her installation, which is really dark for some reason, probably because I took this photo. So, second after Angelina, we'll hear from Jamie Rodriguez. And Jamie is a painter, sculptor, installation artist currently living in West Palm Beach. And he holds an MFA and a BA from the State University of New York at Albany. And this is an image of his part of his installation. Um, Thank you both so much for being here and for taking the time, first of all, for being in the show. It's been amazing having your work in the gallery these past 2 months. And thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts about your work tonight. I'm eager to hear from you both. And for the audience, if you could please mute yourself if you're not one of the artists speaking. And if you have any questions during the two artists talk, the artists are going to speak back to back. And at the very end of both artists talk, we'll take questions. So if you have a question in the meantime, just type it in the chat and we'll address it. The last time we had one of these online talks, we had a little problem with the chat feature. So if it doesn't work, that's fine. We'll just take questions the normal way at the end. But try to use the chat if you can. And that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Angelina.
Okay, great. Can you still see me?
Your box is black,
Hmm.
like your camera stopped.
Let me see if you could see my screen though. I don't know why it did that, but hopefully you could still see my screen even if you can't see my face. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is what's important anyways.
I would argue that, but okay.
Okay.
I
So,
love your face.
yeah. Thank you everybody for joining us. I guess I'll just start by introducing myself. My name is Angelina Palmisano, and I'm one of the painters that was chosen to participate in this year's Fresh Squeezed. Yeah, I just got my master's in fine art, and I'm super excited to tell you a little bit about where I come from and my thoughts behind the work in the show. I like to think of my paintings as portals into different dimensions where we can escape into magical spaces. To start things off, I'd like to speak a little bit about my upbringing. This is a little taste of the Palmisano household, and this is me. I'm a Florida native, as I was born and raised here in Central Florida. I come from very humble beginnings, growing up in a blended family. All in all, I have 8 brothers and 3 boy cousins. After my parents' divorce when I was 12, my dad basically took over the role as both parents for me, and it was truly just me and a bunch of boys or wild animals. I like to say that I was raised with wolves, which would suggest a wild, uncivilized, or uncouth upbringing, and it was, but we were always taught to be respectful and kind. This photograph for me is a private reminder of where I come from. We all played lots of games, board games, computer games, video and arcade games, primarily on consoles like the SNES or Super Nintendo Entertainment System and the Nintendo 64. My favorite games being Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, and Aladdin. Games like these and family are themes that often make appearances within my work. I was raised in a family of people who love art, music, food, gardening, and booze. My late grandparents are Sicilian and Polish immigrants who fled here after World War II and raised their kids to be as Americanized as possible as to avoid discrimination. My dad is a musician, a pianist, and my mother was a painter, ceramicist, waitress, and alcoholic. I was very loved and supported, even after my family fractured when I was 12, at least by my father, who raised me with enough love to almost fill the void of an absent mother. Until that point, I grew up watching art all around me. Music always filled the air, while Bob Ross taught my mother to embrace the mistakes on her canvas as happy little accidents. I embrace mistakes in my paintings in the same way to this day. And even though times could be tough, it didn't take much to entertain us because we always made do with what we had. There was a lot of roughhousing and horseplay going on while Boy George from the Culture Club sang to my mother, "Do you really want to hurt me?" Eventually, my dad had to work 70 plus hours a week after the divorce to stay afloat and ultimately taught me what dedication and a good work ethic looks like. My mother taught me how to love fiercely and how to cope when love abandons you. She was also the person who introduced me to painting, which is why I'm here speaking to you guys now. I make paintings that celebrate life, its beautiful and tender moments, paying tribute to friends, family, and humor, in tandem with the unavoidable pain and loss that makes the good times something worth cherishing. I make paintings as an escape and resistance to the hardships that I have faced in life, and to create magical spaces that my viewers can also escape into. Next, I wanted to dive a little bit into my life as a commercial artist as it bleeds directly into my private practices. I'm a painter, and I've been working full time as a professional muralist since 2019. This has had a big impact on shaping my artistic process within my studio because I first learned how to paint at a large scale. I work for a theming company called Immersive Scenic Studios, and I paint murals for themed rooms inside of luxury vacation homes throughout all of Florida, now branching into many other states. This is a photograph of a painting for a bedroom based on the Japanese gaming company Nintendo and its long lineage of expansive game worlds. One of my coworkers dubbing the title for this project, I Pretendo, for IP purposes. My colleague and I thought it would be fun to paint a scene that looked like you were actually inside of a Donkey Kong Mario level during gameplay, meaning we would create a scene where you run across our screen, try to beat our level by passing a 10-foot tall banana video game hub, avoiding spicy little flame characters, collect coins by bouncing off of a grumpy fish, and bust free some delicious bananas that are frozen in ice. I wanted it to be truly engaging. Within both my professional art and personal, I often paint what I refer to as nods to the original artists that I'm referencing. Paying tribute to my influences is how I show respect, honor, and give credit to the original creators that have had a big impact on my psyche. In this case, paying homage to Shigeru Miyamoto, the famous Japanese game designer from the early 1980s, known for designing not only Donkey Kong, but Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda, among many more household names that made their way to North America that I played as a little girl on my grandmother's floor. This mural was an exercise in creating a space full of potential magical happenings. I sometimes venture into what are called mindscapes. Mindscapes explore the personal landscapes of the mind, which are shaped by individual experiences, consciousness, and subconscious thoughts. These 9-foot circles were designed for garages converted into arcade rooms inside of clients' homes. I like to think of my art as a resistance to the melancholic grimness of reality. Sometimes my resistance can be silly, full of vibrant color and mischievous play. Bubbles are a motif that I use not only as a callback to the classic Super Mario World bubbles, but also to symbolize the fragility and ephemerality of the sweet innocence of childhood. And cheese puffs are symbolic of the immediate gratification of eating cheese puffs and perhaps almost just as immediate disappointment. This painting, titled Wednesdays, is one of 7 paintings currently hanging in the gallery of Moraine Arts Center. It came out of my first year as a graduate student when I was overstimulated, uncertain, and trying to figure out how I fit into the fine art world. Wednesdays is a mindscape, a twilight zone, a person burrowed deep within their imagination, surrounded by whatever invasive thought popped up. There is anxiety in it, but also humor and comfort. The guilt of eating fast food, playing too much Pokemon Go, and turning all that mental noise into something strange, bright, and alive. What may feel chaotic to some is a state of mind I know well and one that I have learned to operate within. Like an animal burrowed for temporary refuge, this painting became a place of protection from pressure, expectation, and the impossible feeling of waters of networking and making a name for myself. Looking back, the abundance of layered patterns, symbols, repeated motifs, intense color, shape, and abstract mark making feels less like panic and more like proof that I could build a world from within it. As Alice Neal would say, I paint to try to reveal the struggle, the tragedy, and the joy of life. The next painting in Fresh Squeezed is titled Peaceable Kingdom. A lot of my work carries hidden art, historical references, and subtle humor. The title, Peaceable Kingdom, nods to Edward Hicks, an artist from the 1800s, in his 62 painting series, The Peaceable Kingdom, which was an allegory of earthly and spiritual harmony and a holy prophecy about the kinship between man and animal. The humor, of course, is that my painting is filled with a bunch of unsanctimonious degenerates, built from firsthand experiences and vices. It's a celebration of life, the good and the bad, and a meditation on an artist's imagination. Around this time, I began building a recurring cast of characters. The Batman is a stand-in for my boyfriend, blissfully unaware that he's about to be struck by love, by me, the angelic Cupid. We're painted as paper cutouts, referencing the sticky note doodles I leave for him each morning before work. And as her memory slowly fades, so does her place hold her. And there lies the blurry gesture of my beloved cat Adelaide, curled beside me in the bottom left corner. Nearby sits a strange, vibrant magenta cat, keeping my beloved Adelaide company in the afterlife. This cat is another historical art reference and memento mori to the late and great Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol, like me, loved cats, and at one point kept 25 of them in his Lexington Avenue apartment he shared with his mother. His artist book, 25 Cats Named Sam and One Blue Pussy, features 16 lithographs of cats, each named Sam, plus one blue pussy, with calligraphy, hand painted by his mother, and the coloring done at coloring parties with his friends. It's Warhol's early ink drawings and collaborations with the people closest to him that touch me the most. When I paint a direct copy of a Warhol cat, it's not only an Easter egg for those who know his history, but a love letter to my own mother. We were inseparable until I was 12, when she unfortunately chose her addictions over raising me. These cats became autobiographical symbols tied to a major point of pain in my heart, and they're also a way for me to have her present when she can't be in my real life. This is a portrait of one of my dearest friends named Stephen Morales, who basically became a muse throughout much of my art. I wanted to position the viewer directly into the scene so they could imagine themselves sitting on the floor across from a companion and confidant, perhaps amidst sharing a latest batch of piping hot secret tea. When I paint a portrait of someone, I always ask them to send me photographs of their favorite personal items so that I can place them in the scene to give a more authentic representation. There's a big shift in energy as we look at this painting titled Stephen's Perspective. Here, I played with how we enter the frame, sitting where my friend Stephen sat at the table, hovering over a bold plate of fries, forcing the viewer to dine with us. And I began to imagine what this perspective might bear witness to with the chaos and laughter of my friends and family during my boyfriend's birthday celebration. I used unnatural color palette and manipulated figures to express personality and atmosphere. By creating multiple focal points, I mimicked the way our eyes shift, encouraging us to move through the image and experience its energy, bringing different elements in and out of focus. Letting intuition guide my composition and details, I filled the canvas with overlapping stories. Whenever I do portraiture, I want people to feel like they know the people on my canvas, even though they likely have never met them. Intrepid Islands, the painting we're looking at now, invites us to be present with them, Meant to evoke a sense of comfort, it is a safe space, visually capturing the spirit of quality time. My intention was to portray the tenderness of a shared moment between friends or lovers caught candidly in mid-conversation, bathed in a dreamy golden glow so warm and yellow that the mood itself radiates warmth. The painting celebrates fantasy and those often overlooked moments we share with loved ones. At its heart, it's an intimate snapshot and serves as a gentle reminder to stay present and savor the time we have with one another while we can. This painting, called No Sugar, depicts myself in the black ball cap and another of my darling friends named Heidi Cruz. She's one of the funniest people I've ever known. Though she's so hot, you'd never expect the level of silliness she offers to the people she's comfortable around. She went to fashion school here in Florida and then moved out to New York to pursue her passions as a photographer and video artist. The setting takes place in her brownstone apartment. This piece is particularly special to me because it was a collaboration, as she shot all of my photographic references and is responsible for the choice and lighting. It's titled No Sugar because these girls do not look sweet. And now, at our last stop for Fresh Squeezed, it's the early 2000s, and you see two of my brothers and our long gone old dirty and blind Lhasa Apso dog named Boomer sitting in the back of my dad's old blue pickup truck. I hated that dog, but the memory of him makes me smile. My dad used to have a paper delivery route in Orlando on top of his teaching job to make ends meet, and my brothers begrudgingly helped deliver those newspapers with him as I would joyfully tag along. This painting is titled Sweet Spot because it takes place at a sweet spot in time during adolescence, right before the weight of the world begins to set on your shoulders in adulthood. You can see the bright orange and pink swirls in the rearview mirror, signifying how ephemeral our childhoods are and how they're over before you even know it. And that is all the art that I have on show at the Maureen Arts Center for Squeeze 10.
Thank you, Angelina. That was amazing. It's been a long time since I felt like I needed a tissue during a gallery talk. That was great. Thank you for sharing your work and your personal experience, which informs your work so much, and being vulnerable like that. That's very meaningful. Thank you. And again, thank you for um, sharing your work here and in our gallery these last several weeks. It's just, like I said in my email earlier, it's been a pleasure and a privilege for us. So if you have any questions for Angelina, save them till the end and we'll get to them. Next, we're going to hear from Jamie Rodriguez. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Amanda. Okay, so let me pull this up. Okay, Amanda, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Hi, so my name is Jamie Rodriguez. I would consider myself an installation artist, a painter, and a sculptor. So we're gonna, as I go through these slides, they're kind of done in phases. So I want to start off with the roots and the deconstructivist architecture. So I'm going to start off with kind of where the journey begins, which is the thesis, graduate school. This piece, well, actually, before I get into the piece, I just want to let you know that I have my MFA and a concentration in sculpture. I was trained in figurative and portraiture sculpture, welding and foundry, the lost wax casting or investment casting. And I developed my painting at the same time in grad school while I was sculpting. And basically, I started to kind of paint my sculptures, which kind of started to mesh the two eventually. And that's kind of how I started to end up doing both at the same time. So I want to talk about this piece briefly. So this piece is titled The Little Chapel. This is what you're looking at is an image of a burnt looking like church with crosses on them. That's a lot to unpack. So we're going to skip over that for now. And I just kind of want to get into the meats and potatoes of how it's relevant now. So this piece called The Little Chapel is found wood, scrap wood. And when I built this structure, I then decided to control burn it. It has a lot of the deconstructive architectural elements that I'm interested in, like fragmented shapes, the arches, and steeples. In this piece, I wanted to expose the framework and the rawness. It's a little chaotic. I was interested in the concept of collapsing structures and the ruins of structures. I was also interested in a Dutch architect called Rem Koolhaas and his writings and theories on this idea of junk space that kind of still remain relevant now in my work. I was interested in abstract geometric forms. So within the chapel, this piece is, or what I call this is the Christ bust. This is the focal point. It's the centerpiece. This bust was made first. It's cast out of plaster. The chapel was built around the symbolism of this bust, which becomes relevant in my work now. There was no painting yet within this particular installation, even though there were paintings involved in my MFA show. And in this piece here, I was really interested in experimenting with different materials before homing down on a couple of the materials that I prefer to use today. So like I said, this is a cast bust. And you can see that on the Christ bust that one of the thorns of plaster got broken. That will become a kind of a staple of my work as working with some of these materials, as mistakes would happen that I couldn't control because some of these materials were extremely unforgiving. And the kind of liquid dripping through the crowns on the forehead is actually barbecue sauce. And that's a whole nother story that we won't get into for today. And as you can see there in front of the Christ bust, there's an iron that I had put in, and there's a whole nother story behind me in this iron. And on this iron, I had burnt tobacco, given the fact that the Christ bust is on a breathing support life system. And at this time in grad school, I was really interested in pushing kind of some of the boundaries of installation work. So I was interested in like activating the sensory of smell. So it was kind of cool at the time to have the gallery filled with the burning tobacco smell, and then the actual burnt wood of the the burnt wood of the framework of the chapel kind of filled the gallery as well. So that was an experiment, interesting. I might go back to incorporating elements like that into my work, but we'll see. All right, so I just want to talk about a couple of the influences that were from grad school that if that moment are just completely relevant now. And I think that like these are just my guys that I keep coming back to on a regular basis. So this is Maurizio Cattelan. I am influenced by a sense of humor and social commentary. This is Robert Gober. I was fascinated by his use of wax, which is one of the main materials that I use now, his conceptuality and the presentation of his installations. I had a chance to see his retrospective in New York City, and it was absolutely amazing. This is a Dutch artist called Volker de Jong. His use of installation foam, that is one of my main materials that I use now. And as you delve more into his work, he really delves into Dutch and European history, and his interpretation or representation of the figure, I think is really modern and unique, and I just love it. And one of my last influences, so this is a Monet painting, and this is Impressionism. So when I talk a little bit about the paintings, it's kind of self-explanatory. It's all about the broken color, the palette, and the evoking of the emotion. All right, so for the next phase of slides, we're going to talk about brutalist architecture, locations, and then the idea of paintings versus sculpture. So this piece is titled The Flight. This piece was actually the model for what is in Fresh Squeeze now. This shows the brutalist architectural elements. I was interested in the facade, the exposing of the brick, the mortar, and the concrete, and the heavy geometric forms. And I just want to say that I really got into this idea of brutalist architecture. I had delved into it and looked into it in graduate school, but when I had the opportunity at a residency to live and work in Latvia and Lithuania, when I would go out and with my friends give me a little bit of tour of the town, I was completely fascinated by the leftover influence of Soviet architecture that was still alive and that still existed in places like Riga and Vilnius. And it was just one of those things that, I don't know, it just kind of hits you when you go to a new place. It left an impression on me. And it was kind of one of those things I just said, you know what, I need to incorporate this into my work. I always had a fascination with Europe, World War II, the Soviets and the Nazis, just the crazy concepts and ideologies and, these big world events. So, it provided an opportunity for me to maybe start incorporating some of these in a smaller scale into the artwork. Also in this piece, you can see that the nature environment, I start to invade the space in contrast to the red and gray brick and mortar. The vegetation is a little bit more lively. It adds some color. This piece, unlike the chapel, obviously has a painting. This is a good example of a lot of my work now where what I do is that the landscape painting actually comes first and then it becomes a centerpiece and the focal point. Even though I feel like with some of these installations, as they build out, they can have multiple focal points, but it's important for me as the artist that the painting is done first. And for me, it is the focal point. And with all the paintings that I do and of all those in the exhibition, these are all from locations and places that I have lived, visited, and frequent. Okay, a couple more things about this piece. Another thing, so everything in this piece is now handmade. There are no found objects. So, like in the chapel, and as I broke away from grad school, I wanted to really get away from using found objects. It was really important for the way that I work. And for me as an artist, I felt to start to make and handcraft everything. So, like I said, this kind of starts that this is kind of a landmarker for going, from breaking away from academia and grad school and taking the found objects and then kind of making a really important decision about my artwork on my own to just make everything. Once again, as you're going to see with the installation in the shows that the painting will always dictate the direction of the environment. So, I don't really plan out the sculptural elements of the painting. Once the painting comes, it's all these influences and things that feel right and feel good. And, when I go out on nature runs and walks, things that I see on the ground or things I see in the air, things that I see in the trees and the forest, it's kind of like, all right, I got to take that. I'll go and make it. And I might not look at it or touch it for weeks or months. And then it will kind of just make sense and come back into the work at some point or whatever installation I feel that it's appropriate for. And in this installation in particular, I'm using my current location here in West Palm Beach and in South Florida as my inspiration, as you can obviously see from the sculptural elements, the wildlife, the ecosystem, the surroundings are what I engage with on a regular basis, on a day-to-day basis. And like I said before, a lot of this stuff is just influenced through me being out in nature, and I have a huge another life of being a distance runner that has never quite left me. It's kind of in my DNA. And a lot of these things and items that you see are things that I've run past or that I saw that I've actually gone back and collected and then either made molds of or brought them back to the studio to actually use them as models to then build the actual sculpture from. So for the next group of slides, we're going to talk about nature, shrines, and the whimsical. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the artwork at the center. So this piece is titled Augustbomb, which is a German word. It translates to English to bombed out. Here are the brutalist architectural elements. I expose the brick and concrete mortar that is obviously Fawkes. The large forms that look heavy. Here I have the brick arches that are Roman influence. And in this installation, I was thinking more about the concept of a shrine, a sanctuary, or maybe a possible memorial to nature, a memorial to these animals and creatures that I have in the installation. The decaying facade looks and is influenced from places of worship in Europe that I have visited, that I've lived at. Being in Europe, I've done a lot of residencies, lived there, worked there. So in particular, I think that this style is really heavily influenced by my visits in Portugal and Spain. The tile design for me is like a decor element. It's a form of interior design. I was interested in the way how the design tiles could add color and pattern and more texture in relationship to the brutalist aesthetics. Here in South Florida, we have tiles very similar to Spain and Portugal. It's also an influence and connection to heritage to Puerto Rico, where my family's from, and Spanish American heritage. The red clay tile roof at the top is influenced by the Spanish colonial architecture here in South Florida. Next, before I change slides, I want to talk about the pedestals. This is actually the first time in an installation or in any work that I've used the pedestals for the first time. The pedestals allow the viewer to engage with the sculptures at eye level for a more detailed look, and they actually are functional. So it's a little bit interesting that a lot of this sculpture and a lot of the work is non-functional. And I feel like for the first time, I actually built something that I didn't even realize that I was building it to be functional, but it now served a function. The elevated platform is more effective than the floor level sometimes for me. In some of my previous installations, I had put these elements on the floor. And I think that by gauging and watching how viewers interact and the audience interacts with the sculpture pieces, I wanted to try something a little bit different. So I went with the pedestals. The pedestals are made from insulation foam. They are not refined or smooth. Amanda, as you probably know, as you've had to handle them. They are made to intentionally have a deteriorating and weathered look. I believe this gives them more character and more curiosity. Doing this, I want to expose the jagged, rough, uneven, and frayed elements of my artwork. The color palette of the pedestals are influenced by the vibrancy of the South Florida tropical environment and Caribbean culture, maybe a little bit of the 1980s pop culture of Miami. All right, here, so this slide is a detail of one of the candle holders. There's two of them. So this is insulation foam board, wax, and in the back of the candle is a paper tile design. It's handmade with the same intent of looking weathered, aged, and decayed. It's carved and designed by me. The candle in this manner is influenced by places of worship, spiritual and ritual ceremony. It serves as a function. Once again, maybe even going back to like grad school and taking a look at the little chapel. You know, like I said, there's this big religious kind of theme that stays with me subconsciously that we're not going to get into it today, but it just pops up in all the work. And I just want to make reference to the fact that the candle holder, not the actual candle itself, is all wax, not the candle holder, but the candle, the metal object that is holding the candle is not metal. That's wax, and the actual wax candle is wax. So what I do is that's done through one of my favorite processes, which is the plaster mold making process. So what I do is that I basically make a mold of a real metal candle holder. And then what I do is that then I have the option of casting once I make the mold into whatever material I want. I prefer working in wax for various reasons. What I did then is that I then painted the wax with metallic paint to then make it look like metal again. So it kind of goes through this transformative process. The mold making process for me is extremely important and critical in my work because it allows for replicas and it allows for multiple reproductions. And it allows me to take what would be a found object and then actually recreate and transform it into my own object. And then, like I said, everything is just kind of cast it. And if ever in the future, if I want to, I could always then cast these wax objects into metal. All right, so the image on the left is a tile design, and the image on the right is from Vilnius, Lithuania. So first I'll talk about the tile design on the left. So in one of my residencies and one of my stays in Portugal, out on the town, just, always searching and looking, I was really interested and fascinated by the tile design, incorporating it into my work. So with all my tile designs, the tiles are usually they're all from right now from Spain and Portugal. I'll probably incorporate some Florida tiles when I get a chance to. So what I do is that at these locations, always having my camera, I'll take the photo of the tile, I bring it back. And then what I do is that I transfer and I hand draw that onto graph paper because it allows me to scale up or down the size of the tile. And then basically I go in and paint it like a painting. And then what I do is I can then take it to a color copy machine, and then basically I can reproduce multiple copies of my own handmade paper tile. The structure on the right is I feel like it's kind of, you can tell that it's influenced by some of the collapsing, dilapidated work that I do. So this is a group, or this is a ruined structure that I had found in Vilnius, Lithuania, as we were walking around town, and you can see the buttress is kind of holding it up. This really influenced my work, and I was really fascinated by walking in downtown Vilnius, Lithuania, how they had these areas where these structures, or what were once structures, what I ended up finding out from my friend is that a lot of times they had like a historical purpose, and they had wanted to preserve like these little segments or areas of these buildings. And I found that kind of like fascinating, like wanting to upkeep and keep showing the history alive there, while at the same time like being around all this like modern architecture and design. So I think that like that, that juxtaposition was really cool and really influenced my work. Okay, so back to the installation. So here I want to talk about the painting. Actually, first, before I go about the painting, on the right and the left hand, you can see a little bit of tile work. Um, I grew up in upstate New York in the Albany, Saratoga, and Troy area, and we have a really, really strong Dutch heritage there. And in our history of art and culture, we have a huge collection of Dutch tile work, Delft tile work. So I was kind of a little bit interested in wanting to kind of bring that into the work, because it kind of just reminds me of growing up in Albany, and you know some of those Dutch influences architecturally that were around as well. So that's kind of what's in this piece. The painting itself. So once again, I said that all my paintings are done from location, of actually having visit there or being there. So this painting is taken from the Berlin Grunewald Park area in Germany. It's a huge forest that's on the Havel River just outside of Berlin. And for me, this piece was very interesting because just outside the forest, as I was approaching this landscape, there's a historical landmark called Platform 17 that was actually a train station that the Nazis had used to deport the Jews of Berlin to Auschwitz and to Warsaw. And at first, I kind of skipped past that and went straight to the landscape. And then coming back, I was like, like, let me check out this building. And then there was a German person that spoke English, and he had explained to me a little bit about the history. And I just was like, wow. I was so captivated by this beautiful, amazing landscape. And now you're telling me like this really dark history that is like right on the edge of, I just skipped over it, not really paying attention to. So, I was going to do the painting anyway. I had just knew that like I had loved that tree, and that's the Havel River in the background. So, I just wanted to incorporate a little bit of that history and that location into the painting. Now I just want to talk about the three-dimensional element of it. So, we have this extension or segment of what I like to call the painting coming off. So there's a skull's head, and it's actually a European blue jay is the bird that's on top. And here I was just influenced by the layers of darkness that lie beneath the earth, like the layers underneath that show the history of a location and event. So when I was trying to figure out a way of kind of extending the 2D painting into a three-dimensional form, I kind of, after hearing the story about this location, that's where I kind of ended up adding the skull, based upon kind of the story that's behind the history that happened in this location. Um, and like I said, I was trying to get the 3D part to kind of function together with the 2D part, and it was really my first time ever doing that. I hope it's successful. I hope that people enjoy it. It's something that I kind of want to keep doing, but it's really tricky, and it's really hard to kind of get that relationship and that balance right between a 2D painting and then it extending out into something sculpturally. But this was really my first time ever attempting to do that in an installation. So to me, it's really it stands as like a important landmarker in my work for me. Okay, so then back to Florida. This is a Muscovy duck. I don't know how much these ducks, if they exist in the Gulf side of Florida, but in here, West Palm Beach, once again, going out on my runs on a regular basis in the parks, these ducks are everywhere, and they're actually an invasive species. They they don't bother me. I don't bother them. I just find them fascinating. I think they come from South America, Argentina. So, but to me, they just look South Florida. So I was just like, I gotta make one of these. So this is a real Muscovy duck, and then this is my duck, insulation foam and wax, same process and materials of everything else that I've been working on. So next is the ibis. So in ancient Egypt, the ibis was a sacred symbol of Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and magic. So once again, just through my journeys and adventures here in South Florida, and especially coming from the upstate New York and the Northeast, we don't have things like this. So it's almost like everything that I find in Florida looks like it's either going to hurt me, kill me, or that it should be extinct. So we have these ibises everywhere. They're such weird, strange looking birds. And I just had to do one. So this is my ibis. It was originally white because we actually don't have scarlet ibises down here, but I wanted to switch over to the red. I want to switch over to red because red is a powerful color and it can mean raw emotion, urgency, and power. This was one of the first ibises and birds that I wanted to really try and capture the gesture and the movement. Obviously there's a whimsical aspect to this creature. So for me, this was the first time using the insulation foam that I wanted to open up the wings to maybe give it a little bit more action. And for the first time in this piece, I had used joint compound to help kind of smooth out around the edges of the wings. And my first job out of graduate school was actually working construction. So a lot of these materials are influenced by my first job coming out of grad school. And joint compound is one of those things that I was always like, using it for sheetrocking and stuff like that. I just kept in the back of my mind. I'm like, wow, if I ever get a chance, I would like to use that in sculpture. So, using this insulation foam, it allowed me to use it. And also with this piece, the last thing I want to say about it, that, this was really tricky because working with this insulation foam material, like trying to get the balance right of the bird without thinning out the legs too much, the sculptural platform for support and stability was really tricky. So once again, I'm still trying to home in and improve those aspects of my work working with this material in particular. All right, so this is one of my paintings from the show. So this piece is titled Reflectionscape number 6, and it's oil and spray paint on canvas. So just to talk about kind of a little bit how I approach painting is that my technique is, or what I like to describe as broken color. I mostly mix on the canvas. I want to capture the fleeting effects of sunlight. These paintings are layered. Some of them take months. Sometimes they are started and they're not finished until after a year. I use my sculpting tools with paintbrushes to create a more dynamic feel to create the directional movement of the paint. I prefer to paint in oil because I prefer the finished look, the thick consistency for my style, and it just has a richer look to it. I want the focus of the painting to be about the layering and the buildup of the color, light, texture, and the rhythmic distortions. My goal is to create a distorted expressionist harmony of natural perception and the organic flow of nature that is authentic. So this is another painting from the show titled Reflectionscape number 1. Basically the same concept. Once again, I'm thinking about capturing the moment, sometimes a fragmented moment of time in that location when I am searching for that cherished memory in nature. And the interesting thing, or the things I like about these, is that these two paintings, and some of these paintings are actually from Berlin, Germany, but you would never know that, and it's not really important because there are scenes like this that you can see all over the world, and we have scenes and these reflections in Florida as well. So when we were picking the show, I was kind of liking the fact that knowing that there was huge elements of Florida involved, to bring a little bit of Europe into it and kind of mix it up. Actually, I really like that idea, and I'm glad that it was able to carry on that way. All right, so then I want to briefly talk about my material and process for these slides, because a lot of people at the opening were always wondering what the heck they were looking at. What is it made out of? So I'll just go over it real quickly. So that's it. Those are my tools. Wow. A Sharpie, a rasp, a sheetrock knife, and a saw. Everything, basically, they're the same materials that we use in construction. I like to keep everything simple. There are many different tools you can use to complicate this. I'm not a complicated person, so this is what I like to use. So this is what the insulation foam looks like, XPS insulation foam. What I usually like to do is to build what I call insulation foam pancakes. It's basically a foam block. It's very similar to or I like to think of it as the analogy is that it's very similar to a artist sculpting marble or a sculptor sculpting wood. All I'm doing is just basically taking the insulation foam, cutting it up, adhering it to each other, and building up a literal carving block. And then I take the Sharpie, and then like someone who's working stone, working marble, working wood would then go, and then you probably take a look, you make your slash, and you'll cut. And I really got into this idea of carving because I had a chance to do my first residency out of grad school was in Finland, and I had met a master wood carver who was at the residency helping run it, and he had offered me to take wood carving course. So I ended up taking wood carving, and this whole concept of carving, it kind of changed my concept of how I could work when I came back to maybe get more back into sculpture. Also, too, the one thing that I liked about this is that it's a subtractive and additive process, unlike when I was wood carving, unlike marble, unlike stone, where here, if you make a mistake or something, you chop something off and you want to put it back on with the foam sealant or with another adhesive, you can use, it's usually forgiving. You can go back and add that back onto it. It's lightweight, so it allows me to make my sculptures large, and it's easy for packaging. It's easy for transportation. And this is just a sample in the studio of an early stage of the piece. Like I said, when it's all put together, this is kind of what the insulation foam looks like in its rawness. So I just want to show a slide of what these things look like before they're painted. You can, see how I start to carve out and get some of the muscle, try and get some of the movement, some of the action, the hair on the back of the neck, the ears start to form the face. So it's, like I said, it's working, you're working it like it would be marble, wood, or stone. It's three-dimensional, it's forgiving. So, I just want to show this what it looks like in its raw stage. And then, after some refining, maybe some sanding here and there, and then some paint, sometimes I like to seal it. This is the finished product. So I was working this piece for installation. I wanted to do a donkey, and then, this is the end product. And also too, it's finished with acrylic paint. So for some reason, and I think it's more so that it has to do with the timing of how things dry, is that the acrylic is much more effective for the sculpture stuff. And actually the look is good. I have done some of it with oil, but acrylic is more effective, and I leave the painting for oils. All right, so the spoonbills. So once again, with these birds, just trying to capture the gesture and the movement. These are sculpted rough and made to look a little bit crude on purpose. I'm interested in the abstract shapes and forms being juxtaposed to the more detailed and refined heads and bills. With this style, I want to create tension, uneasiness, and an intentional awkward moment of curiosity and intrigue, and I'm okay if you don't like it. And I did have one person come up to me at our opening, and they were totally confused and uncomfortable with what they were looking at. And they had brought up the fact that why is some of it really smooth and looks detailed? And then they were unsettled, uneased with the rough handling of the body. So I had to explain to them that it was done intentionally. And I think that after them understanding, they start to become more comfortable with it. But they did tell me that it was a little bit of a shock value. Like they didn't just know how to take it. So that's okay. So this is just a spoonbill in nature, just to show the reference of, when I go. Okay, so once again, the loose, raw, rough look of the work for me allows me to give the sculpture a unique quality of imperfections and textures that cannot be repeated the exact same way. I want to bring life and personality into the sculptures. The spoonbill is interesting to me because of its prehistoric look. The pink roseate feathers, for me, looks like something from a fashion show on the South Beach in Miami. And one of the last images, I'm not interested in the aesthetics of mass-produced commercial-looking sculpture. I want the work to look and feel of my lived experience, the mistakes, impressions, and imperfections. And this is one of the spoonbills called Looking Up, and just the back view of it. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Jamie.
Oh, thanks, Amanda.
It's funny that you mention your the pedestals that you made because I knew darn good and well before you brought your work what it was made of, but every time I moved those pedestals when I was installing that front gallery, I was bracing myself to pick up something heavy. It's like I had short-term memory loss or something. It's like, oh, it's not that heavy. So, and it brings me to think about both of your bodies of work. You know, there's huge, obvious differences in your work, but um, it's similar in the sense that my experience in our interacting with visitors in the gallery during the run of the show, Jamie, obviously, people were very surprised to hear what it was made out of because it's some of it definitely looks like brick. It definitely looks like tile. And then you say, no, it's made out of insulation foam, and that kind of blows people's minds. So there was that surprise element. And then Angelina, in your gallery, I've had several people that were convinced that you incorporate photographs in your work. And I'm like, no, she just is that good of a painter.
Nice.
So it was kind of the similarity there. It just occurred to me. But both of your galleries, they're just so engaging in very different ways, but it's been fun to see people interact with them. You know, Jamie, even when they don't understand it, people, I've learned recently, people are very particular about birds around here. It's,
It's weird.
it's I could tell you stories. It's something that people feel very passionately about. So, but you know, I'm glad they made it out of the gallery unscathed. So, um, anyway, all right. So, oh, there's some things in the chat, but no questions, just lots of lovely compliments. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, I have, oh, well, Crystal, we'll go with your question. If you can't type it in the chat, just say it out loud.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So happy to be here and experience everyone's artwork. I have two questions, if possible. Not trying to talk too much, so sorry. Please
No,
stop
you're
me.
good.
So for Angelina, I like how you explained about the impact of your family and your childhood and how transparent and vulnerable you were about that. And so I was thinking, I'm someone that writes poetry and things like that, right? And I write a lot about family and my mother in particular, right? So I was wondering, as you're painting these things and these memories are coming up about your mom or your family, how do you move past being triggered and like transform that into art? Like, do you have like a self-care ritual as after you get these things done? Is it not that deep for you actually because you're just looking at it so observationally? Like, what is your process for that?
That's a really good question. I really like that question. I will say it gets easier with time. You know, like I've been working through that abandonment and the difficult relationship with my mother. I had a portrait I did of her, and honestly, weren't really on speaking terms, and so painting her, which this painting wasn't in the show, but that was really painful for me. And you know, after I just like when you write poetry or when I make a painting, like that's how I communicate. And so after I made the painting it was, like I cried, I wrote
Mm,
about it and it was cathartic in a way, but it's just something that I don't ever shy away from, like painful experiences. I think that it's always best to be extremely self-reflective, and the more you express that artistically, it's a way of getting over it and getting through it.
mm,
And, I think that that resonates with people. That's why I choose to be vulnerable and open, because I want to connect with you guys and I want people to look at my work and feel connected to my story. And so if I have to be honest about where I come from and what I've been through, and I feel like that's the only way I can make anything meaningful. So my only advice is, I would write your heart out, be honest, let it hurt, and then maybe like watch Law and Order the next day and drink some wine in solitude. Like just have a heal day after. It's like therapy, like when you're super open and honest in therapy, you kind of need to hide away and, be kind to yourself and be gentle, because it
mhm.
is really painful stuff for a lot of artists.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that advice and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Did you have another question, Crystal? I think you said you had two.
I did. Don't want to hog up the
No,
time.
no, go
But
ahead.
Jamie, I wanted to ask you, you said for your paintings that it takes a while for you to complete them, right? So I'm guessing you have multiple paintings going on at the same time, right? So what is your process? Like, what leads you back to one in particular? Or do you have like an Excel spreadsheet with all the different names of your paintings and you're just going by them methodically? Like, how does that work?
Well, it's not methodical. It's kind of spontaneous. I kind of let the painting choose itself, and you know, I have we have lives, and my life is quite busy. So in a way, I think that Angelina, that she would agree that sometimes art making can be therapeutic as well. It can be profitable. It could be, I know maybe some people might feel that it could be a nuisance. So I kind of don't overthink about it. I just kind of
Mm,
let it go. And then when I have the time and energy to paint, I just do it. And then when I feel tired and I have that thing, I have that voice in my head saying, take, relax, like, don't worry about it. You'll get back to it. Then, I'll let it go. And then I'll wait to, kind of that energy comes back. So there's really no methodology that I use. It's kind of like a little bit in a way controlled chaos.
mm-hmm. Okay. I like that idea, the controlled chaos. That's cool. All right. Okay. Thank you for sharing.
In the chat, our friend Chevy Chase says, combining the elements of the vision, the building, and working with materials, then being able to put it together is quite the talent and just amazing. Jamie, can you build me a 1970 Chevelle? To scale, of course.
Yeah, if you can put up the money for the materials, absolutely.
To scale. Uh,
Oh, yes. Yeah, we can make it.
so I have a question for each of you. What's next for you both individually?
I'll let Jamie take it first.
Do you have residencies coming up, Jamie? Like in the
Um,
future?
okay, I don't, Amanda. So right now, I'm at the Coral Springs Art Museum for a show for the 250th, celebrating the American landscape.
Mm,
I am in a show at down here in Delray Beach at the Cornell Art Museum. I'm waiting to hear back. I think I'm going to be at an exhibition coming up, but it's not confirmed yet. And right now, I'm teaching, as I told you before, I got summer school. And then by the time summer school ends, I have the semester. So I'll have a week and then go right back into teaching. And yeah, like I said, I mean, we'll see what happens. But I got those two shows going on and one potentially coming up. So I think that will take me through the summer and then always looking for opportunities and meeting people and seeing what happens. So,
great. And of
Uh,
course, I'm sorry. And of course, next year we'll see you both back at the Morian
yes.
because you live here now. Go
yeah,
ahead,
I'm
Angelina.
super
I'm sorry.
excited for next year's tenure.
Me too.
anniversary. That was literally like, oh, you guys are Fresh Squeeze 10. And also, by the way, that automatically means next year we get one piece into the 10-year celebration. So another excuse to go out to beautiful St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Um, so I just got accepted into the Win-Win Gallery exhibition for the Mills Gallery, which is a little gallery in Orlando. So I'm very excited about that. It'll be with 5 other artists who are also like emerging in their careers, very much like myself. So I'm going to be putting all of my heart into that. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm always just applying to everything, literally everywhere. But I just really try to stay active in the art community. So I'm looking forward to the Win-Win exhibition, which is in November. Um, and then anything else I can get my hands on that people will let me in the door for. So
That's
that's what
great.
I've got going around the corner.
I just heard about the Mills Gallery. I was in Orlando yesterday helping a friend install a show at, or June actually, at City Arts.
Yes, I have a painting in that as well. That's tonight.
Oh
Um,
yeah. You
but
have a
I'm
painting in the big show there, the
mhm.
anniversary show, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. That's of
Oh.
my swan. It's a swan
Oh.
painting. I love her.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
I know.
Okay.
I'm sad. I wanted to see June sing, and she said she would sing me a song, and I was like, I'm not
Oh, you're
here
doing
to.
this.
Yeah. No,
I
no. I'm
know I
there.
couldn't go because I helped her hang it yesterday, but I was like, I can't come to the opening because I'm here.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, small world. But that looked
I,
like a nice gallery. I didn't get to see it,
yeah.
but yeah. So in the chat, lots of kind words. Congrats to both of you for your exhibitions. Proud of you, Jamie. Continue to follow your passions from Tracy. I don't know if you guys can see all of these. Um, Angelina, your choice of colors and feelings that your paintings exude is incredible. Um,
Thank you.
uh, um, yeah, you guys did amazing. When we were um, going through the 130 artists that applied for the show. It goes without saying how much your work and Jamie's work stood out to us. Jamie, for you, we kept going back to it. We know we loved it, but we were like, what is this?
Yeah, that's what I get a lot.
It was just, especially with the work that you applied with, it was just so like crazy in a good in the best way. But yeah, it just didn't, when we read more about it and all that, we knew we had to have it. And Angelina, I mean, your painting skills are just amazing. And then not just that, but the story, your personal story, it all just goes together. I mean, your work would still be amazing, not knowing anything about you, but yeah, it just makes it just a whole experience for our viewers. So thank you again for being part of the show. We appreciate it so much. And thank you, everybody in the audience. If anyone knows of anyone who would be interested in hearing and viewing this talk that could not log on tonight, we will have it uploaded probably by midweek next week to our YouTube channel. And Jamie and Angelina, I'll send you the link to that when it's ready, so you can share that if you want. So,
Nice.
um,
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda.
so thanks again to the two of you and to everybody that joined us tonight. We hope to see you at the Morian soon. So take care, everybody.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.